Welcome to the Freedom Founder Podcast. I'm your host, Zach Duggar. Now, when I was younger, I used to mow lawns, I used to shovel driveways, and I never really thought about how I could expand beyond my local neighborhood, to the neighborhood next door, to my community beyond. There are many opportunities like that you can expand over time to increase your thinking. Now, my guest today, Bryan Clayton, had a much larger operation than what I was doing in my local market. I'd love for him to talk a little bit about that. But we're also going to talk about how he got into the tech industry from the world that he was operating in. So, Bryan, thank you for joining me today.
Zach, thanks for having me on. It's great to be here.
Now, we won't start with the tech industry because that's not where your story begins. Let's talk a little bit about your initial journey into entrepreneurship. Tell me a little bit about how you got started in business.
Yeah, I would like to tell you that I was a natural born entrepreneur, but the reality is I was forced into it by my father. He got tired of watching me play Nintendo all day, and I'll never forget the day he interrupted me playing Super Mario Kart and said, "Get off your butt. I've got a gig for you. You're going to go mow the neighbor's grass." And this was a direct order. I
Yep.
wasn't living in a Democratic household. And so he made me go mow the neighbor's yard, and I got paid $20 for an hour of work. And I was hooked. I was hooked on owning my own business. And the first thing I did after I got done with that yard was I started passing out flyers all over the neighborhood and got a handful of customers and just stuck with that. And I never looked back. I always mowed yards through high school and then went to college and cut grass during the day and went to business school at night. And then when I graduated college, I had to make a decision. Was I going to stick with this lawn care business or go into the job career world? And I thought, well, maybe business ownership is my lane. And I thought, well, I don't really like to be a lawn guy. It's not really what I want to do, but maybe there's a business here that I can like pour my heart into. And so I made a little business plan, and over a 15-year period of time, little by little, grew that into a large landscaping company, around 150 employees, eventually getting it to around $10 million a year in sales. And then in 2013, that business was acquired by a big national conglomerate. So it was a great way to get started, in what it means to run a business and what entrepreneurship is all about.
Absolutely. And it took that push off the couch from your dad, got the gig for you in the non-democratic home situation like you said you lived in. I like that. And there are a lot of people that are sitting on the couch today or that are doing that generally, not just playing Mario Kart, but maybe just on their phones. And so there's opportunities that exist right there in your own neighborhood. So I like that it started at a young age.
Totally. Yeah. That momentum, that movement created luck. It's hard to get anything going. It's hard to build anything without some little small step in the right direction. And that's how 22 years of entrepreneurship has been for me. After I built and sold that business, I had to reinvent myself and become a tech entrepreneur. I had this idea for GreenPal. I thought an app should exist for making it easy to order a lawn mowing service. And I thought, well, why can't that be me? Why can't I build that? And I didn't know the first thing about being a tech entrepreneur. I didn't know how to code. I didn't know how to write software or anything like that. But I just took a little step where I would take an online course on YouTube on HTML basics or watch a talk from somebody else who had built a mobile app back in 2013. And little by little, taking little small steps towards closing the gap towards where I wanted to be and where I was how we got GreenPal going. And now GreenPal is a 10-year overnight success with 300,000 people using it.
Wow. Yeah. I mean, I like how you stated that, a 10-year overnight success. And I've also read, and it's in the title of this episode, that it's been called the Uber for lawn care as a service. Yeah. So, I mean, it's really interesting because I hadn't heard of this until you and I had spoken, that you could get on the app, you can get online, you can enter in your address, you can find someone that is in the area that is open and willing to mow your lawn for you. I mean, It's amazing. I'm sure there are people that would love to have somebody just come to their door, but this is now a new way of accessing those people that are already on there interested to do the work.
Yeah, I think that's the future. I think this, this mobile phone is going to be the remote control for your whole life. Maybe it already
Yeah.
is, and everything that you need to get done, whether it's you need to get a ride to the airport, you need to get groceries delivered, you need to get your dinner delivered on DoorDash, or whatever you need done, now comes from the phone. And lawn care should be a lot like that as well. You should be able to push a button and get somebody to come take care of this for you. You shouldn't have to call around getting quotes and leaving voicemails and begging people to come take care of this chore for you. You should just be it should be like magic, and that's what we set out to do a decade ago, and we're still working on
Yeah.
how do we make it cheaper, better, faster, smoother, more reliable, to get this chore done, rather than doing it the old way, which is how still 90% of people still get it done, just through voicemails and phone calls and text messages and emails
Yep.
and checks under the mat and cash. And so it's our job to bring this into the future, and to make it as easy as ordering an Uber.
Yeah. Now, with this app or with GreenPal, are you currently in primarily in one state and one part of the region of the United States, or have you found that starting to access most of the United States?
Yeah, it's funny. We started in Nashville, Tennessee. That's where we live, and we
Yep.
spent 4 years in Nashville tinkering with the product, trying to get it to work smoothly. Where if you were a consumer, a homeowner, you needed to get somebody to take care of the lawn for you. It actually happened. You
Yeah.
push the button, you got quotes, they hired them, they showed up, they did a great job. There's a million things that can go wrong in those steps, and so fixing all of those things took us like 3 or 4 years, and we figured, well, we might as well just stay in one city, until we figure all that out. When we had a mantra: nail it, then scale it. And so after we got the product experience dialed in, we then began to move into other cities. Atlanta, Georgia was our next city, and then Tampa, Florida, and then so on. And now we're in every major city in the United States. So any city in the country where there's over 15 or 20,000 people, you can download GreenPal and get somebody to come take care of it for you.
Wow, that's impressive. Yeah, I like that you had told me before too that coming from what is a blue collar type of career path and just moving into a tech world, a new industry, and just learning little by little, gaining access to more information, tinkering, trying things out, and becoming a 10-year overnight success. Can you talk a little bit about the transition and a mindset shift that you might have had to go through to be able to shift from doing the direct work to moving into this more of a tech industry and kind of building up this platform?
It was daunting. I'm not going to sugarcoat it. It was really hard
Yeah.
because it was kind of like, it's kind of like if you have an idea for a song, but you're not a musician, and first
Hmm.
you got to become a musician, then you can lay down the track, and then you make the song, and then you realize, or the album, and then you realize all that was hard. But the hard part is actually getting 100 people to show up for a concert or show,
Mm.
or 100 people to buy the album off of iTunes. And so that's kind of how I experienced it. First, we had to learn how to code. That was really hard. Then we had to build the product. That was challenging. And then if you build it, they will not come. We had to figure out a strategy to attract people on a local level to use the platform, and you have to do that in every single city from the ground up. So that was really hard. One thing I stumbled onto that I was able to do to figure out what the hell of our strategy was. We weren't like venture funded. We didn't have any outside
Mhm.
investors. We had to fund the business off of its own revenues. And I had to learn from these big companies that were raising lots of money. And so I would drive for Uber. I would drive for Lyft. I rented a spare bedroom on Airbnb. I walked dogs on Rover and Wag. Those are two platforms for dog walking services. And then I delivered groceries on Instacart. I delivered food on DoorDash. I use every single one of these apps, like 30 or 40 of them, as the
Mhm.
consumer and as the supplier, the vendor. And then I would take screenshots of every single little step. And then I would try to figure out, well, why did they build it this way? And why does the copy say that? And then I got a
Mhm.
push notification at this moment and the email says this and so on. And so I would literally like tear down the way these multi-billion dollar apps and platforms were built. And then I would apply it to my little humble world of lawn care. And that was a way that I was able to learn from best practices in kind of a new emerging gig economy type of thing that we were kind of able to build it on a shoestring budget.
Yeah, I like that. It's like taking apart an engine or something and seeing how it works,
That's
and
right.
really just deconstructing that different models. That research, that's quite the process to have gone through and tried these different platforms, both on the customer side and also on the vendor side, and doing the work and seeing how it would be from both perspectives. I mean, that must have given you some great insights into how you could adjust and change things for GreenPal.
Yeah, it's funny. I had a mantra, and I still have a mantra that action produces information. So a lot of times in business and trying to start something from scratch, you're stuck. You don't know what to do, and so
Mhm.
you kind of stay stuck, and you don't take any kind of action. And it happened to me in maybe year 3 or 4 that we were stuck. I didn't know what sort of things we needed to do to the product to get it unstuck. And I thought, well, what can I do? What's inside of my little circle of influence? What can I do? And I thought, well, I actually ordered Chinese food on DoorDash the other day, and it was actually really, really, really frictionless. It was delightful, the
Mhm.
whole experience. I need to figure out how they did that, and I thought I need to sign up as a driver for DoorDash. So I did that first, and I said I don't know what I'm going to get out of this, but that action is going to produce some information that's going to lead me down the path. And so I just kept doing, and then that spawned this kind of like 2 year initiative where I used every single one of these things, and so all of that action produced the information of, okay, we need to make these changes in our product because the big guys are doing it.
Yeah.
And so if you always kind of think about that, whenever you're stuck in business or in life, that think of things like an experiment that you don't know what to do, but if you just took a little small step towards the right direction, it might produce the information on what you're supposed to be doing.
I like that. I think that's a great strategy for all businesses, really. Just you have to take action to be able to produce the steps that you need to take to get to the
Exactly.
next step that you get to take. So if you don't know where you're going, just you'll have to identify an action to take to
Right.
be able to move it forward. So with this business, it sounds like you didn't start this alone. Sounds like you have partners in that. Is that correct?
That's correct. Yeah, I had two co-founders, and
Okay.
without them, we wouldn't be where we're at. So it was really, really critical that I get that right. And I got lucky.
Yeah.
And luck is not a strategy when it comes to co-founders. So if you're thinking about starting a business and you're thinking about bringing on co-founders, really look at it like you're getting married. Like almost like,
Mhm.
we put, before we get married, we date somebody for a year or 2 or 3, then we get engaged for a year or 2, and it's 5 years before we're married. But yet people will start a business with somebody they've known for 2 weeks or a year,
Yep.
and haven't spent a whole lot of time with. And so, and the reality is that it's easier to unwind a marriage to get a divorce than it is to
Mhm.
unwind a business partnership. It's
Sure.
very complex, especially if the business is doing well, if it's got meaningful revenues. It's really hard going through that kind of divorce. So don't start a business and co-found a business with somebody unless you can imagine doing it without them. If unless you can say they are my business soulmate. One
Yep.
thing a test that I put to this is, if you had $5 million in the bank, would you strike them a check for $5 million to start the business with you? If the answer is no, then don't start the business with them, because ultimately their chunk of the business is going to be worth $5 million. or you may want to raise some capital, and their chunk of the business will be is that amount of dilution you're going to take. And so think of it that way. Go through that mental exercise, and if you're not that convicted, then go it alone.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, there's a lot of value in partnership and working with others, but there is potential pitfalls and difficulties. So you really
Absolutely.
do need to vet those relationships. And I think that analogy with being like a marriage, but also having the difficulties of dissolving, excuse me, that relationship. I think that very, very good point. So, well, it sounds like you did have good luck in your relationship with these co-founders, and that together you've been able to successfully grow a business that is producing great results and is continuing to grow over time. So when you get to the point when you've indicated it's a 10-year overnight success and it's still growing, what are the strategies at this point to kind of continue to help grow your business and just increase the access to this tool?
Yeah, that's a great question. I like the way you put it. Increase the access, meaning we have 300,000 people using it, but we need to get
Mhm.
to a million, literally a million people using it every day before we really matter. Before we want to be in the same conversation as Instacart, DoorDash, Uber, Airbnb, Lyft, and so how do we create more access? How do we connect more people with the value that we provide? And what got us here may not necessarily get us there. And so we've gotten most of our customers through word of mouth and just good old fashioned Google search engine optimization. If you're in Lincoln, Nebraska, you need a lawn mowing service. You type into Google lawn mowing near me, we pop up as one of the options for you to consider. That's worked really well to get us to 300,000 customers, but is that going to get us to a million? I don't know. And every business goes through three kind of phases. There's the startup where you're just trying to figure out if if you got an idea that works, and then there's the grow up, which is let's get a business going, let's get some real revenues, let's make sure we're profitable, and then there's the scale up. So the startup, the grow up, the scale up, and we're somewhere between grow up and scale up. And I've never scaled a 9-figure tech company before, so we may find that I suck at it. So if we find that, we'll get a professional CEO in my spot. But we're going to keep experimenting, keep doing things, keep figuring out different ways to grow. Could be referral loops inside of the platform. Could be different paid marketing channels. It could be partnerships. So we've got some figuring out to do to figure out how we're going to get to where we're at to 1 million users.
Yeah. Yeah, I like that. I like also having that big goal too. So you have those targets that you're working towards, and identifying that what got you here may not get you there.
That's right.
Sometimes you have to change the strategy. And if I'm not mistaken, I think there's a book with that same title. But I like that you're working to adapt and also identifying that there are times when you might not have the skill set. So you might have to bring in others to assist in that process and continue to grow with guidance from other professionals that have that experience. So one of the things that we didn't talk about that I just wanted to make sure we circled back on is when you were operating your landscaping company, you got to a point where it was acquired by a larger conglomerate, but you also had to think about what you wanted to do at that point. Were you preparing to sell it? Were you planning to? Kind of, what were your thoughts on that? And any advice on somebody who might be thinking about starting at a point, building a business that they want to sell and planning for that?
Yeah, if you ever think that one day I'd like to sell this company, well, then you need to begin with the end in mind.
Mm-hmm.
You need to figure out what that finish line looks like from a sales standpoint to a staffing standpoint, systems and processes, and work your way backwards. You need to proactively work an exit strategy because it'll never happen. The reality is 99.9% of businesses in the home services space and probably adjacent spaces never get sold, even though a lot of founders think that they want to sell their business. The reality is that they don't have a saleable business. So you got to proactively work an exit plan. There's a great book about this called Built to Sell, and that's all that book is about. Is about proactively working a plan to get there. For me, I never really anticipated selling my business. I thought I was going to run it forever, but I reached like a point of where I plateaued from a personal development standpoint. I didn't really understand this, but for 15 years, I was building the company and I was growing and evolving alongside it. I was becoming a new person every year or two or three, and like that was rewarding to me. And that plateaued. I was no longer challenged at that level by the business, and that I began to become discontent with running it. And so I thought, well, I'm going to try to sell it. And from the moment I had the idea to sell the business to the moment it was actually acquired was a little over 2 years. And I had to reverse engineer a lot of processes. I had to hire a lot of people. I had to fire a lot of people. I had to rebuild the business from the inside out. And so the way you run a business, like you're probably running it right now, a lifestyle business versus the way that you run a business that you eventually want to get acquired are very, very, very different. It's important to know the difference between the two and to proactively work a plan where every quarter of every year you're hitting some metrics. You're knocking down some goals that's going to get you quarter by quarter, year by year to that goal of getting it ready to be acquired.
Okay. Yeah, I think that's a great resource. Built to Sell. I think that's what you said, right? So
That's right.
I definitely would encourage anybody who's thinking about over time getting to that point they want to sell their business to get that book or look at other resources, talk to other people who have gone through that process, because you otherwise will have to go through that period of time of reinventing and reorganizing. And as Bryan said, having to hire people, fire people, and kind of get it to where it is sellable. And
Right.
At that point, I also like the fact that you mentioned that you were looking at that personal development side and acknowledge that you got to a point where you were discontent and realized that, I'm no longer kind of feeling that growth that I desire and get satisfaction from. So you're able to then shift gears, get the business sold, and have had some tremendous growth since then with regards to the tech industry and learning a whole new way to market services and to get services out there. It's still related to how you got started in the lawn care business, but now you're being able to reach so many more people and across the nation.
Yeah, exactly. I had to sell that first company to create the space to build the next company and to get back on that track of personal development with business development. And now, I'm a totally different person than I was when I started GreenPal. So yeah, that's how I experienced it. And I hope anybody listening to an interview with me comes away with the idea of, if that guy can do it, I can do it too. Because that's 22 years for me, starting with a push mower to now running a nationwide network of lawn care services. It all starts with something small. You should be growing and evolving and developing alongside the business. And if you stick with that, stay consistent, the compounding eventually kicks in.
Yeah, I like that. I think that's a great point to make, and you can identify that, hey man, if I could do this, you can too.
That's
So
right.
I like that, Bryan. I think sometimes people don't always see the beginning of a journey. They see the end and they see
Yeah,
where somebody got to. So it's good to go back and reflect upon where it started and that it takes growth and development over time to get to where you are today. So I
totally.
have one additional question I like to ask all my guests. If we were to be handed $1 million today to invest in your business or another endeavor with no strings attached to that, how would you invest that, or what would you do with it and why?
Yeah, well, if that's a great question. I like to go through that mental exercise myself when thinking about raising capital, except for I say,
Yep.
if my mother gave me $1 million, or if I had to put my mother's house on the line and as collateral for this money, and if it doesn't work, then she's out on the street. I would treat that $1 million as if it was my own money, or I
Mhm.
would treat it very, very seriously. So I would put it to work on things where I know I could get a return. And so a lot of times as the founder of a business, even if you have a small home cleaning service, you're wearing the hat of a capital allocator, which is I've got money coming in. I'm going to put money capital back out to work. So even if you have a simple home cleaning service, and you might say, "Well, I'm cleaning homes and I've got some money, I want to put it back to work." Well, then maybe you're going to invest in some new scheduling software. Maybe you're going to invest in a employee training system that's going to train employees, because that's a big part of the problem with that type of business. Or maybe you're going to invest in some new equipment that does a better job, that enables you to charge a premium over your competitors. You have to figure out ways you're going to invest that capital. So for us, $1 million, I would probably spend it all on furthering our growth team. And so our growth team consists of SEO experts, guys and gals that look at the content we're making. How do we get that content to rank? Growth experts in terms of the traffic's coming in. How do we convert more of that traffic? We're only converting 80% of the people that come to the landing page. How do we move that to 70%? Hiring smarter people around that. I probably would hire another engineer to work with the growth team, because that's always a bottleneck. And then I'd probably hire another data scientist or two, because figuring out what to do with all of this data and what it means and letting the data speak is always a bottleneck for us. So I would spread it across all of those things to put more fuel on the fire, so to speak, and then make the flywheel spin faster.
Yeah, putting that money to work for you, I think that's great. And also treating it as if it were coming from your mother, treating
That's
it
right.
as somebody that has something to lose in that process. So I really value that perspective. Now, if people want to find out more about you or GreenPal, what's the best way for someone to connect with you?
Yeah, just look, greenpal.com is the website.
Okay.
Look, GreenPal in the App Store or Play Store. And anybody wants to hit me up, Instagram is the best place to reach me, Bryan M. Clayton. Just drop me a DM there.
Perfect, Bryan. Well, I really appreciate this conversation. It's been a joy. Thank you for joining me on the show today.
Thanks, Zach. I enjoyed it. Great show.
Absolutely.